translation. He has some of the prayers. No, it's in here. I just lost it. It's right here. It's in the beginning of this book. So these are prayers by true Bhaktivinod. And I was thinking, I'll just say one word, you repeat it. We can do it like that, like as if we were doing a Pushpanjali, if you want, okay? Nama, Namo, Namo, Bhaktivinod, Sat, Chit, Ananda, Namine, Gaura Shakti, Swarupaya, Rupanuga, Varayate. So, Namo Bhaktivinod, Sat Chit Ananda Namine, Gaura Shakti, Swarupaya, Rupanuga, Varashate. So I'm going to read it one more time. Namo Bhaktivinod, Ya Satchit Ananda Namine, Gaura Shakti Swarupaya, Rupanuga Varayate. I offer my homage to Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur, who is named Satchidananda, is the very form of Mahaprabhu's internal potency, and is the best follower of Srila Rupa Goswami. Srila Bhaktivinod ki! So this is a very interesting pastime. I read it a year ago. My wife got this book for me when you were all leaving to go to India. That was in December, so I got it probably about 6 months ago.
Could you please read the translation one more time? I didn't catch a few words there.
Yes.
Please. Thank
you. Did you read mine too? No. So, here is now, everyone please pay attention. I offer homage to Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur, who is named Satchidananda. He is the very form of Mahaprabhu's internal potency, and the best follower of Srila Rupa Goswami. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. So, this is a very interesting passage. The story is that Bhaktivinod Thakur is taking his son, at this time his name is Bimala, along with some other sons of his, to a few places where Lord Chaitanya's pastimes have been going. So, in 1885, Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur took Bimala along with other sons to visit a few places of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes in Bengal. Arriving late one evening on the outskirts of the Kulinagram, a settlement whose former inhabitants were very dear to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the father and sons were accorded repose in a temple. Next morning, upon entering the hamlet, they were asked by some local residents where they had come from and where they had spent the night. Upon hearing the answer, the village men amazingly asked, "How could you have slept? No one can stay there peacefully, for it's haunted by a Brahma Rakshasa who pitches stones and brickbats at anyone passing by after dusk." Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur replied, "Yes, that ghost did try to disturb us, but I loudly chanted the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and he went away." Learning that he was Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur, whom they had already knew of, some having read his books, the villagers became very obeisant and further questioned, quote, "How did you quell that ghost by chanting Hare Krishna? Previously, he was the priest of the temple and he chanted Hare Krishna throughout his life. How did he become a ghost? And how could your chanting expel him?" I think this is a very interesting instruction from Srila Bhaktivinod. Something also to meditate when we chant ourselves. Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur told them that the priest must have vibrated only the syllables of the name, thus producing a physical lip-dip sound, lacking spiritual essence. I don't know what the expression lip deep. That's right, lip deep. So what would that mean, lip deep to you?
Like only here, not
here. Okay, good. Now, so I was kind of going towards. So he was just saying extra lip deep sound, lacking spiritual essence. So I'll repeat that again. Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur told them that the priest must have vibrated only the syllables of the name, thus producing a physical, lip, deep sound, lacking spiritual essence. When Bhaktivinod asked about his character, they replied, quote, "He was not good. He committed many sinful acts, but he used to recite Harinam almost constantly," end quote. Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur further explained why the Greek priest could not have been truly chanting. Quote, "Sinful people, with the intention of acquiring wealth and reputation, make a show of kirtan. But that is merely cheating. As stated in Srila Jagannatha Pandit's Prema Vivarta, Sadhu Sange Bhai Krishna Nam Nahi Hoy Nama Namakshara Vahishraya Bhate Nama Kabu." Those not in the association of authentic devotees cannot actually utter the holy names. Even though they may externally vibrate the sound Krishna, that is not actually the name of Krishna. I'll read it again. Those not in the association of authentic devotees cannot actually utter the holy names, even though they may externally vibrate the sound Krishna. That is not actually the name of Krishna. So then it continues, he quotes, "The name of Krishna is not different from him, and thus completely pure and spiritual. Krishna Nama does not allow himself to be plundered by materialists. This man never actually chanted Hare Krishna, only Nama Apara. Because of severe offenses to the holy name, he became a ghost."
Oh my God.
The man then asked, what, in quotes, "Can he ever be released?" Jai Gornita, Jai Shishivara. Can he ever be released? Where was it? Can he ever be released from that wretched condition? End quote. Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur said, quote, "If he hears the real name or the proper explanation of Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam from a bona fide sadhu who has a genuine connection with Krishna, then he can be liberated from ghostly experience. Henceforth, all troubles caused by the specter ceased." The villagers then realized that Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur was himself that caliber of exalted sadhu, whose pure kirtan had the power not only to exorcise unyielding ghosts, but to deliver the entire universe from the maelstrom of material life. Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur ki jai! So that's why we have Prabhupada playing japa. So we have a real authentic devotees association chanting Hare Krishna. So anyway, now I just got this from Mother Kaivalya, and it's one of Bhaktivinod Thakur's writings, and it was translated, and is this correct? It was translated in commentary by Jayapataka Swami Ki Jai. It's called Sri Godharma Kalpa Tavi. So I was going ahead. I'm going to skip the forward and introduction because they're by different other devotees. Well, the introduction is by him, so I'll read the introduction. Try to talk Om Gyan Tiparanta Shagyanam Jana Salakaya Jaksori Matajena Dasman Sri Guru. To teach by his personal example how to awaken one's love for the Supreme Lord and how to engage in pure devotional service, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the most merciful incarnation of Lord Krishna, sometimes comes to the material world in the role of a devotee of Krishna. Although Lord Chaitanya's spiritual mission was somewhat suppressed during the adverse circumstances of British rule in India, Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur, the prominent spiritual master of the Gaudiya Vaishnava disciplic succession, nonetheless assumed responsibility for receiving the movement and making it available to everyone. Through his endeavors, Bhaktivinod Thakur was able to re-establish the Gaudiya Sampradaya and once again manifest the widespread preaching and practice of Krishna consciousness throughout the Indian subcontinent. And in regards to what Prabhu was saying this morning, that I read this in another place earlier, that when he was born, when Bhaktivinod was born, they were in such, the Vaishnava, the followers of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in such, had fallen to such a degree that when he was born, they gave him a name which translated Prahlad amongst the Asuras.
Wow.
Because they were all Vaishnavas. And there was 13, I think, either 11 or 13 sects. The Ao, Bao, the Smartas, and all these Asampradayas. And I thought it was very interesting, again, that they were mentioning that the Nam, in the Nam Hatha description, Bhaktivinod wanted the occupation of sweeper, which meant that he wanted to sweep away all of the false philosophies that arise. Because that's a very, very interesting point. If you think about it, we have, there's always this tendency, we have to be careful what we say about other devotees. And a lot of sometimes devotees will say, well, you're wondering what's going on at this place or this devotee. And, well, boy, I don't really want to say anything about other devotees. But if it is actually a case, if it's a case where someone is actually preaching something that is not our Siddhanta, not Srila Prabhupada's Siddhanta, you have an obligation to say something and not to allow this false philosophy be taught or lived out in the name of Srila Prabhupada. We have a responsibility to do that. So it's a very delicate, it's a razor's edge. You have to make sure that you're actually, what you're seeing and hearing is not Prabhupada's Siddhanta. And before you speak, that's true. But just to sit idly by and watch it happen, no, Bhaktivinod would sweep it away. Yes?
If you're allowing it to happen, you're being victimized.
You're culpable. You're culpable. After the fact. Yes, and you're being victimized. You're allowing other people to be victimized. So, the Godrama Kalpatavi, the Desire Tree Groves of Godrama, was a newsletter produced by Bhaktivinod Thakur to guide the leaders and members of his new preaching movement. I was able to secure 5 issues of this newsletter. I do not know if any more are extant. Extant? Is that the word? Extant.
Extant.
E-X-T-A-N-T. Extant.
Meaning still
existing. Still existing. I was able to secure... I obtained these 5 issues when, at the beginning of our preaching in West Bengal, His Holiness Bhakti Churu Swami gave me a copy of the Gaudiya Patrika, a magazine that had been edited by Abhay Charan Bhaktivedanta. The magazine contained an article that cited 5 issues of the Godrama Kalpatavi. I translated those issues into English and in 1979 presented the work as a small book. Coincidentally, at that time I had been considering to call our congregational preaching movement the ISKCON Sankirtan organization. But when I discovered that the name Namhata derived from Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur and Lord Nityananda, I realized that this same traditional name was applicable also to our initiative. Consequently, I considered that this Namahata was actually given by Srila Prabhupada himself, since he had been the president of the Gaudiya Patrika magazine. Something I didn't know. From the Godrama Kalpatavi newsletter, we have gathered that Bhaktivinod Thakur established at least 500 Namhata groups and was actively preaching amongst Grahastha devotees. By his personal guidance, preaching example, he was able to revive Lord Nityananda's Namhata preaching program. So it's actually coming from Lord Nityananda himself. In the Godrama Kalpatavi, Bhaktivinod Thakur dealt with the practical circumstances encountered in the course of his preaching. Therein he gave his followers various practical instructions, most of which are still relevant today. His purpose was practical in principle, such as his authorizing any kind of music provided that the lyrics were Krishna conscious. In other words, a festival, not like in the temple. Similarly, in ISKCON, we have writers of music, art, and so on, all of which can be used in devotional service if the end result is Krishna consciousness. We see how those instructions of Bhaktivinod Thakur's was applicable not only for his time, but also for the future. It is significant to witness the direct guidance and words of one of our Gaudiya Vaishnavacharyas to the devotees of that day regarding how they should apply Krishna consciousness in the preaching field. This is the specialty of the Godrama Kalpatavi. Written approximately 120 years ago, these Godrama Kalpatavi newsletters describe a transcendental market wherein the Lord's holy names are systematically distributed to faithful customers who are willing to accept such a spiritual product. Based on the currency of one's faith and devotion, the Supreme Lord, based on the currency of one's faith and devotion for the Supreme Lord, everyone, regardless of caste, creed, color, or religion, is eligible to purchase the holy name. Specific descriptions of roles and duties, as well as cautions and guidelines, are provided by Bhaktivinod Thakur to his Namhata employees. The distributors of the holy name amongst the general, his employees, the distributors of the holy name amongst the general populace. By the mercy of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the previous Gaudiya Vaishnavacharyas, Lord Chaitanya's message of service to Lord Krishna is certainly spreading far and wide all over the world, and this was predicted more than a century ago by Bhaktivinod Thakur. Today we are witnessing the fulfillment of that prediction, for Krishna consciousness is reaching to people in every country and is tangibly benefiting their lives through the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and the practice of devotional service, attempting to follow in the footsteps of our spiritual predecessor Bhaktivinod Thakur, who was the great grand spiritual master of ISKCON's founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. We most sincerely desire to share Bhaktivinod Thakur's instruction regarding Namhata preaching. I don't know how much of this I can read. Maybe someone else can come up and read a little also. Someone else want to come? Yeah. Because I'm sweating.
That was a nice introduction.
Yes, and it's actually, you've read it?
No.
But so far it is, yeah. And so it's like a page and a half still left. If you can just sit where I am and get up. The old man tries to walk again. I left him for the
Thank you, Prabhu.
You're welcome.
How much longer should I read, Prabhu?
Well, if you just turn the page, you'll see it ends.
Okay. Over the years, I have commented and lectured on the instructions contained in these Godruma Kalpatavi newsletters, while simultaneously applying those instructions and guidelines in the preaching work of the Congregational Development Ministry. This current version of Godruma Kalpatavi includes those commentaries through which I tried to give insight and purport to Bhaktivinod Thakur's words. Having lived in India for over 40 years, I have gained significant experience in the matter of preaching to the congregation. Through the Congregational Development Ministry, we wish to share this experience and understanding to provide a broader context regarding the Namahata, which will be more easily understandable and applicable to devotees of this modern age. In his explanation of the Namhata system, Bhaktivinod Thakur assigned to every member a particular job description, some form of work in the preaching structure. Whether an employee was selling or doing something else, the understanding was that everything was transpiring under the direction of Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya. It is notable that the position of Lord Nityananda as the chief trader of the transcendental market and also the role of the traders from Navadvip, Vrindavan, and Jagannath Puri are emphasized. Within this scheme, Bhaktivinod Thakur maintained a very humble status, placing himself as a sweeper of the marketplace. Notwithstanding one's social position, all had a role to play in the Namhata. The instructions in Godruma Kopatavi are certainly pertinent to our ISKCON society, for currently, over 90% of our members work outside the institution and practice devotional service at home. Bhaktivinod Thakur was considering how he could present Krishna consciousness as relevant for all, how everyone could become an employee of the Namhata and preach Krishna consciousness. Because at the time Bhaktivinod Thakur was working for the British government, he was thus preaching through his own example. Therefore, even though one may be working in the material world, all are eligible to be a Krishna conscious marketer of the holy name. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati instructed his disciples to broadcast the glories of Sri Dham Mayapur and of Navadvip Parikrama, to print books, and to establish the Namhata. Of these three activities, the Brihad Madanga, massive book distribution, has been considered the primary method of expansion. But nowadays, when 98% or more of the devotees in our movement are congregational members, Namhata is more relevant to ISKCON than it was in the beginning stage of our movement. In retrospect, we understand that the Namhata program was the foundational method used by Srila Bhaktivinod Thakur, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and Srila Prabhupada. Now is the time to reorganize ourselves and include the Namhata program in our preaching mission. I just stopped because was Maharaj saying that was the main method employed before he came to the West? Is that the idea? Did I misunderstand it?
What method?
I thought he was talking about Bhaktivinod Thakur.
I'll read the sentence again, because he said both Bhaktivinod Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and Srila Prabhupada. The Namhata program was the foundational method used by all of them.
Yes,
So that's like pre-America, or pre...
including when he came to America. He
including
was
when he-
applying it when he was sitting in Tompkins Square Park.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I'm just trying to understand how that is so if anybody has... Now is the time to reorganize ourselves and include the Namhata program in our preaching mission. It is reassuring to know that this Namhata program is bona fide and authorized by previous Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharyas. In this modern age, it is most practical to apply the Namhata form of preaching, cultivating people through small groups formed of the congregation. Namhata groups can begin anywhere without restrictions, whereas in a temple there are so many restrictions, not only spiritual but also material, in the sense that so many expenses must be met. The Namhata system starts first with a small group, and then later, when the congregation grows, it is quite natural to establish a temple. In this way, things can develop naturally. By that process, many of Bhaktivinod Thakur's Namhatas later developed into temples. Although the social situation has since changed, for instance, now people drive in cars, whereas in those days they used horse buggies. The aspect of people working outside and practicing Krishna consciousness from their home has not changed. Today, we have different kinds of Namhata programs, such as counselor groups, Bhakti Vrikshas, and various other groups, all of which are included in the broad category of the Namhata. For managing the Namhata, Bhaktivinod Thakur established a Panchayat, administrative council, of 11 people to be the highest governing body of the society. This example of a governing body rather than one acharya being the head of an institution is very significant. Is the idea, does anybody know why he established 11? Was that to have like so you have a majority if there's a split on something?
Yeah,
Is
it
that the
seems
idea?
like it.
Okay.
I'm just,
that seems logical. But I would go back to the point that I think that Prabhupada made adjustments after he came to the West. I'm not sure about this, but while you're reading, I was thinking, yes, prior probably that's the way it was in India, but Prabhupada was trying to create, in the beginning he was wanting devotees to live in the temple. But at a certain point then, he wanted to create Brahmins. Then there's been an adjustment as we went along.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with that.
Yeah.
I'm not arguing with Maharaj that
Yeah,
that's
no,
not what Prabhupada. I just didn't understand what he meant because during his manifest presence, he didn't see Prabhupada. I don't see that he was doing that a whole lot in his worldwide preaching. That's why. So maybe before his pre-America Western days, he was. That's what I'm trying to understand. Okay.
He wasn't actively doing it, evidently, but he had a vision that, because there's a quote that's often seen in the Congregational Preaching Journal, that he was on a walk with some devotees, and my Guru Maharaj was there, and Prabhupada said, they walked by a church, and he said, in the future, it won't be that people have to come and move into the place of worship like in our temples, but they will be practicing Krishna consciousness in their homes. So he actually had that vision of long ago, and that quote was in the early 70s.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Okay. So I left off here. Today, I'll read the last sentence again, just so we can refresh. Although the social situation has since changed, for instance, now people drive in cars, whereas in those days they used horse buggies, the aspect of people working outside and practicing Krishna consciousness from their home has not changed. Today we have different kinds of Namhata programs, such as counselor groups, bhakti vrikshas, and various other groups, all of which are included in the broad category of Namhata. Okay, so here we are. For managing the Namhata, Bhaktivinod Thakur established a Panchayat, administrative council, of 11 people to be the highest governing body of the society. This example of governing body, rather than one acharya being the head of an institution, is very significant. Bhaktivinod Thakur did not place himself as the highest authority. Rather, he used the Panchayat system of Lord Nityananda. Similarly, many aspects of the original Namhata structure are very applicable to the needs of our present-day preaching movement. And maybe Astika Prabhu could tell me, but I remember reading some definition of Panchayat, which is like the 5 head people of the village or something like that. Is that so it's kind of like that idea came from that. The Godruma Kalpatavi is important for all devotees of ISKCON. It provides practical strategies for distributing Krishna consciousness and exemplifies how to encourage our fellow preachers within Lord Chaitanya's mission. It is particularly relevant to ISKCON's Namhata program, which Srila Prabhupada himself had encouraged us to institute. He said that we should invite the members of the Namhata to Mayapur and to other ISKCON temples so that they would see firsthand how Krishna consciousness is practiced in the temple and then could practice similarly at home. In essence, the Godruma Kalpatavi newsletter shows how the Namhata preaching was organized by Bhaktivinod Thakur. It is our sincere hope that all will obtain inspiration and insight from reading this book. Jai Pataka Swami, Shri Jai Pataka Maharaj Ki, Jai Bhaktivinod Thakur Ki.
Jai.
Thank you very much for that.
I was just wondering if Astika and Sri Chaitanya, if their parents came because of Namhata. Is it? Both of your parents came? Your parents came because of Namhata?
So